Midnight. A bridge stands abandoned, its ends collapsed, leaving only a single span hanging over the dark river. Locals whisper that if you dare step onto it at night, you'll hear a woman's voice calling your name, and if you answer, you may never return. This isn't just a ghost tale, it's a tragedy that really happened in a quiet village in Kedah, Malaysia. A bridge built with good intentions became a trap for the living. A woman in red fell that night, and her spirit has haunted the place for decades. What really happened on that cursed bridge, and why do villagers say some bridges should never be crossed? Stay with Uncle Hollow NX as we uncover the truth. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you definitely don't want to miss. They say some bridges connect more than just two sides of a river. Some carry secrets and curses. I grew up in a small village in Kedah, a place where the river cut us off from the outside world every rainy season. We had nothing more than an old wooden bridge, rickety, dangerous, and every year someone almost drowned trying to cross it. For decades we prayed for something stronger. Then came Encik Rahman. He had left Malaysia for England when he was young, and after 30 years abroad, he returned, full of nostalgia and determination. He wanted to give back, to build something lasting for the people he left behind. And so he promised us a new bridge, made of concrete, strong enough to stand for generations. At first, it felt like a blessing. Villagers cheered as construction began. Old women whispered that finally the children would be safe. I remember standing on the riverbank, watching the foundations sink into the mud, feeling like our lives were about to change forever. But not everyone celebrated. An old man muttered that the day chosen to begin construction was unlucky. The village imam warned Rahman to hold a prayer before pouring the first mix of cement. And when the ceremonial offering toppled over in the wind, some of us exchanged uneasy glances. We brushed it off. Who could fear a bridge? Who could question a man who only wanted to help? Yet only hours after the ribbon-cutting ceremony, blood stained that fresh gray concrete. A woman named Kak Ros, dressed in red, tried to flee her violent husband by running across the unfinished bridge. She never made it. That was the day our blessing turned into a curse, and the red ghost woman began her haunting.
When Encik Rahman first returned to our village, he was nothing short of a legend. People whispered his name with respect, almost envy. He had left Kedah as a poor teenager, boarding a fishing boat that carried him to Penang, and from there across the ocean. No one saw him for 3 decades. The stories we told our children painted him as a man who conquered the world. Now, standing before us in his crisp white shirt, his polished shoes sinking into our muddy road, Rahman didn't look like the boy who used to chase chickens by the river. He looked foreign, his Malay still fluent but softened by an English accent, his manners precise and distant. Yet when he smiled, it was warm, genuine. "I want to give something back," he told the elders, his voice trembling with emotion. "This village raised me. I cannot forget." The gift he promised was no small one, a concrete bridge to replace the fragile wooden crossing. For years, people had fallen into the river. Children, traders, even an old imam. Some survived, others didn't. The bridge was more than a convenience. It was survival. When construction began, the village erupted in celebration. Men offered to carry sacks of cement. Women cooked curries and rice for the workers. Children chased each other around the scaffolding, shouting that they would be the first to cross. It felt like the whole community had been reborn. But not every face carried joy. I remember old Pak Hamid, the village's storyteller, muttering as he chewed betel leaves. "This land, it doesn't like to be disturbed. The river has taken many. It will take again." His warning was brushed aside. Who listens to the old when progress is at stake? Even the imam's caution went ignored. He urged Rahman to hold a Kanduri Doa Salamat, a prayer for safety, before laying the foundation. Rahman, eager to follow schedules, promised, "Later, we can pray after." That night, when the ceremonial offerings slipped into the river, the elders exchanged uneasy looks. Still, the bridge rose. Day by day, its pillars grew from the mud, defying the current. To us, it was a symbol of modernity, of escape from years of isolation. Traders imagined easier routes to market. Mothers imagined their children safe from the river's pull. Yet, under the surface of our excitement, something darker simmered. Some nights, workers swore they heard strange cries over the rushing water. Tools went missing. A scaffolding collapsed, injuring a man, though no one could explain how. Each event was small, explainable, until... But that was still to come. For now, we clapped our hands, we cooked our feasts, and we told ourselves nothing could go wrong. After all, Rahman had come home. What curse could touch a gift given with such love?
Everyone in the village knew Kak Ros. She was not the loudest, not the most beautiful, but she was the woman who always wore red. A red blouse on market days, a red scarf when she fetched water, even a red baju kurung at Friday prayers. Some said she wore it to hide bruises. Others whispered it was her way of clinging to life, to stand out in a world that tried to silence her. Her husband, Karim, was a fisherman whose net rarely filled and whose temper often did. When he drank, which was often, his fists found her. More than once, neighbors pretended not to hear the screams through their thin wooden walls. What could they do? Step between a husband and wife? In the kampung, that was considered dangerous, almost forbidden. That night, the moon was veiled in clouds, and the river smelled of rain. Work on the new bridge had stopped for the day. Half its frame was complete, the cement still raw, its railings absent. It was dangerous even in daylight, but to Kak Ros, it was a path to freedom. She stumbled into the night barefoot, clutching her shawl around her shoulders, her red blouse torn at the sleeve. Behind her, Karim shouted, his voice slurred, thick with rage. She could hear the thud of his footsteps on the earth, feel the closeness of his breath, though he was still meters away. When she reached the bridge, she hesitated only a second. The villagers had warned, "Don't step on it until it is finished." But what fear could be greater than the fists that chased her? She ran. The cement was slick with dew, the planks uneven. Every step echoed across the river like a drumbeat of doom. Halfway across, she heard it, a crack. Not of footsteps, not of wood, but of stone. The bridge trembled beneath her. "Ros!" Karim's voice roared from the shore. Whether it was rage or fear, she would never know. Then, with a sound like thunder splitting the earth, the section beneath her collapsed. The unfinished span tore away from its anchors, dragging her down. She screamed once, her red blouse flashing in the darkness before the river swallowed her whole. By the time neighbors arrived with lanterns, the water had already closed over her. Karim stood on the riverbank, trembling, muttering her name. Some said he wept. Others claimed they saw him smile. All that remained was a single sleeve of red fabric tangled on the jagged edge of the broken bridge. The next morning, her body was pulled from the water, crushed beneath a block of concrete. The imam prayed for her soul. The workers blamed poor construction. Rahman himself stood silent, his gift now stained with death. But the old man, Pak Hamid, only shook his head. A bridge built without blessing will demand its own offering, and it has taken her. That was the last day Kak Ros walked among the living, but it was the first night the red ghost woman began to haunt our village.
The bridge was repaired quickly, as if pouring more cement could bury the memory of Kak Ros. Workers labored day and night. Villagers brought food again, and Inchik Rahman insisted the project must continue. But though the cracks in the concrete were patched, the cracks in our hearts remained. The first whispers began only a week after her funeral. A fisherman claimed that while casting his net at dawn, he heard a woman calling his name across the water. He turned, expecting to see his wife, but no one stood on the shore. The voice came again, closer, urgent. Tolong, tolong aku. Help me. He dropped his net and ran, never returning to fish by the bridge again. At first, people dismissed it as grief or imagination, but soon others told their own stories. A trader walking home one evening swore he saw a figure standing at the center of the unfinished span, a woman in red, her hair wet and clinging to her face, staring at him silently. He blinked, and she was gone. Children whispered that when they played by the river, someone splashed water at them, though no one was near. Mothers scolded them for lying, but the fear in their eyes was real. Even the workers began to complain. Tools misplaced, cement buckets overturned, scaffolding shaking with no wind. One night, as the imam led evening prayers, a scream echoed from the river. We rushed out, lanterns swinging, and saw a boy flailing in the water. His father leapt in to pull him out. When they dragged him to shore, the boy gasped, "She pushed me, the lady in red." That was the first time we heard it clearly. The ghost was no longer content to be seen. She was touching, pushing, pulling. She was angry. And yet, Rahman refused to believe. "It's fear talking," he insisted. "Fear turns rivers into monsters. When the bridge is finished, you will all see it will save lives, not take them." His words were firm, but his eyes betrayed doubt. The imam tried again to hold a cleansing prayer, a kenduri, to honor the dead and ask protection for the living. Rahman nodded politely, but nothing was done. Meanwhile, the sightings grew bolder. A trader swore she saw Kak Ros's red blouse floating in the current, though her body had long been buried. A man cycling home claimed the wheels of his bicycle froze as if someone grabbed them. He turned to see a pale face beneath the bridge, watching. The whispers were no longer just whispers. They had become screams, shouts, warnings carried on the water. And then came the night of the first true haunting, the one no one could deny. A group of boys, daring each other, walked across the half-finished bridge at midnight. They laughed, shouted, stomped their feet, until suddenly all of them froze. Standing at the far end was a woman, her clothes soaked, her hair covering her face, dripping water onto the cement. Slowly she raised her head.
The boy swore her eyes glowed red, and as she stepped toward them, the concrete under their feet cracked. They ran, screaming, one of them collapsing in terror at the riverbank. To this day, that boy, now a grown man, refuses to cross any bridge at night. From that night on, no one doubted. The red ghost woman had risen from the river, and she wanted us to remember how she died.
The bridge had become a place no one wanted to cross. By day it stood quiet, gray concrete stretching across the river like a promise unfulfilled. By night, it was a wound in the land, a jagged scar that pulsed with fear. Merchants who once praised it now avoided it. Children who once played around it refused to go near. Even the workers, strong men used to danger, refused to return. It wasn't just whispers anymore. Everyone knew the red ghost woman claimed the bridge as her own. Still, the unfinished structure loomed. Some villagers said tearing it down was the only way to appease her. Others argued it would bring shame, especially to Rahman. He had poured money, sweat, and his own reputation into the project. To admit defeat would be to admit that death was stronger than progress. Then came the night the river itself decided. It was close to midnight when the storm began. Heavy clouds rolled over the village, swallowing the moonlight. Rain fell in sheets, pounding on rooftops, swelling the river below. The bridge groaned with every gust of wind, its concrete skin trembling as if alive. Several men later swore they saw her that night. The woman in red stood at the center span, hair whipping wildly, arms stretched as if daring the storm to take her. Others claimed she wasn't standing at all. She was floating, drifting just above the concrete, her eyes fixed on the village shore. And then it happened. With a crack that echoed across the valley, one of the side spans split. Concrete shattered, sending chunks tumbling into the raging river. The entire left section of the bridge collapsed, swallowed by the black current. The sound was so loud that people rushed from their homes, lanterns bobbing in the rain. They gathered at the riverbank just in time to see the final slabs break away, vanishing beneath the water. No one had been on the bridge when it fell, yet the villagers swore they heard screams, not from their own throats, but from beneath the surface of the river, as if countless voices were trapped below. When dawn broke, the sight was undeniable. What had been a proud structure was now a half-bridge, ending abruptly over the river like a severed limb. The remaining concrete looked blackened, as if burned, though no fire had touched it. "It's her," one elder whispered. "Kak Ros will not let this bridge stand." From that day on, the bridge was declared cursed. Merchants rerouted their paths, even if it meant losing hours of travel. Farmers chose longer roads, carrying heavy loads by hand. Mothers forbade their children from playing anywhere near the site. Even the imam called for another prayer ceremony, but this time the turnout was sparse. Fear had already hollowed the community. No words could cover the truth. The bridge was no longer a symbol of hope, but of death. Rahman, pale and haggard, visited the site only once after the collapse. He stood in the rain, staring at the broken remains, his hands trembling at his sides. Those who saw him said he whispered to himself, "I only wanted to help." Then he left, never to speak of the bridge again. But the bridge didn't rest. Even in ruin, it seemed alive. Fishermen claimed that when their boats drifted near, waves pulled them toward the jagged concrete, as if invisible hands reached from below. At night, the collapsed span glowed faintly red, like embers underwater. The red ghost woman had spoken. Her death was not an accident. It was a curse, and the bridge was only the beginning.
The collapse of the bridge should have ended the story. Concrete lay twisted in the water, jagged edges sticking out like broken bones. No one dared rebuild. No one dared cross. The bridge was dead, but the haunting was not. It began with whispers, soft and unmistakable, drifting across the river at night. The first to hear it was a farmer named Idris. He was walking home after dusk when he heard a woman call his name. Not shouted, whispered, tender, as though from just behind his shoulder. He turned. No one was there. The river was empty, the banks deserted. Yet the voice came again. Idris. He swore it was Kak Ros. He ran all the way home, his lantern swinging wildly, his breath ragged with fear. Soon others claimed the same. Traders, children, even a teacher, all reported hearing their names carried on the wind. Some ignored it and hurried away. Others, like Idris, ran. But a few answered. One night, a young man named Fayez disappeared after being called. They found him at dawn, sitting in the middle of the ruined span, his clothes soaked, his lips moving silently as if in prayer. When they shook him, he looked at them blankly. "She knew my name," he whispered. "No one else knew it. Only her." It took days for him to speak normally again. He never went near the river after that. Another time, a group of boys dared each other to approach the ruins. They returned pale, trembling, one of them unable to stop repeating, "She called me! She called me!" His family eventually moved to another town, desperate to escape the curse. But the most terrifying story belonged to Kareem, the husband of Kak Ros. After her death, he was never the same. At first, he stumbled through the village drunk, shouting her name into the night. Then he began muttering that she came to him at the window, drenched and silent, her hair dripping onto the floor. He told neighbors she waited outside their door, whispering his name over and over. One evening, his cries turned to laughter. People heard him yell, "I see you, Rose! You can't hurt me anymore!" Then came silence. The next morning, his house was empty. No trace of Kareem was ever found. Some said he fled the village. Others insisted she finally claimed him, dragging him to the river, the way the bridge had dragged her. By then, no one doubted the truth. The red ghost woman wasn't just haunting the bridge. She was hunting the people who lived near it. The fear spread beyond Kedah. Stories of the cursed bridge reached neighboring villages. Travelers avoided the road altogether, forcing merchants to find longer routes. Even the bravest refused to walk near the river after sunset. We villagers lived with a new rule, unspoken but absolute. Never answer when your name is called at night. Never turn toward the voice. And above all, never speak her name out loud. For by then, everyone knew. The Red Woman didn't just haunt shadows. She knew who you were. She knew your name.
As fear grew, so did the stories. And with every whisper of the Red Ghost Woman, people began to remember the woman she once was. For all the terror, there was something heavier in our hearts. Pity. Kak Ros was never meant to be a ghost. She was born the youngest daughter in a poor family near the riverbanks. Her mother died when she was barely 10, leaving her to care for her younger siblings while her father worked the fields. Neighbors remembered her as the girl who always hummed while sewing scraps of cloth into makeshift dolls. Even then, she loved color, especially red.
It was the only brightness in a world that seemed determined to dim her light. When she came of age, choices for a girl like Rose were few. Education was a luxury, independence almost impossible. At 16, she married Kareem, a fisherman from the next village. Perhaps she hoped for safety, or maybe just a chance to leave her father's crowded house. Instead, she walked into a different kind of prison. Kareem was a man of moods, gentle in the morning, cruel by night. He drank away his earnings, cursed when his nets came up empty, and blamed her for every misfortune. Rose learned to cover her bruises with long sleeves, to smile in daylight and cry in silence. But she never stopped sewing. Her hands created beauty even as her life frayed apart. There was a time when she dreamed of opening a small tailor's shop in town. She spoke of it once to a neighbor, saying, "If I could just save enough, I'd make clothes for brides, for children, not just patching old things, but something new, something that lasts." It was the only time anyone remembered hearing hope in her voice. That dream died the night she ran across the bridge. In the weeks after her death, villagers pieced together fragments of her story. A shawl she had stitched was found hanging by the river, its fabric torn but still bright red. A neighbor revealed she had confided about leaving Kareem, about starting fresh in the city. Even her younger sister admitted Rose once whispered, "One day I'll walk across a bridge and never come back." It struck us all like a cruel irony. She did walk across a bridge, but not to freedom. Instead, it became her grave. Perhaps that is why her spirit lingers, not out of vengeance alone, but because she was denied the simple life she deserved. No husband who loved her, no shop with her known on the sign, no children to wear the dresses she might have sewn. Every time someone saw her red figure on the bridge, they weren't just seeing a ghost, they were seeing a life stolen too soon. The Imam once said quietly, "When the living forget the pain of the dead return to remind us." We all knew he spoke of Rose. And so, the legend deepened. She was no longer just the woman in red who haunted the bridge. She became the symbol of every broken dream, every silenced voice, every woman whose story ended too early. And that, perhaps, is why the fear never faded. Because behind the terror of the red ghost woman, we could all see something worse. Ourselves, our families, our own hidden cruelties reflected in her fate.
For a time, we told ourselves the red ghost woman belonged to us alone. Our grief, our curse, our shame. But curses have a way of seeping past borders, carried by rivers and whispers. The first outsiders to encounter her were traders from the next district. They came one morning leading oxen carts heavy with goods, only to stop at the broken span of the bridge. One of the men swore he saw a woman crouched on the far side, her hands trailing the water. She looked up, he said, and smiled. By the time they blinked, she was gone. The men turned their carts around and vowed never to return. Word spread quickly. Soon stories of the ghost bridge of Kedah traveled farther than the river. Young men from neighboring villages, eager for thrills, came at night to test their courage. Some laughed and saw nothing. Others returned pale, shaking, whispering about footsteps following them, about hearing their names hissed from the shadows. One man, a bus driver passing the riverside road, told a chilling tale. At 3 in the morning, his bus empty, he glanced in the rearview mirror and saw a woman in red sitting quietly in the back row. Her face was hidden by her hair. When he turned the bus lights on, the seat was empty, but wet footprints trailed down the aisle. These accounts made their way into local papers.
Small columns at first, strange sightings in Kedah village. But as the number of witnesses grew, the headlines grew bolder. Cursed bridge, claim another victim? Television crews even visited once, their cameras scanning the ruins by day, their anchors laughing nervously by night. But when one cameraman captured what he swore was a faint figure in red on the tape, the crew left abruptly, refusing to stay another hour. The attention only deepened our fear. To outsiders, it was a curiosity, a thrill. For us, it was survival. We had to live with the bridge, with the river, with her. Every new story confirmed what we already knew. She wasn't just haunting our memories, she was here, alive in the shadows. And then came the worst. A group of college students, thrill seekers from the city, decided to spend a night camping by the river. They mocked the old tales, filmed themselves daring each other to shout her name. Around midnight, villagers heard frantic screams. By dawn, the group staggered back, their tents abandoned. One of the girls was missing. Her friends claimed that she had walked onto the broken span after hearing someone call her. They pulled her back, but when they turned, she was gone. Search parties combed the river, but her body was never found. That tragedy silenced the laughter. The government closed the road leading to the ruins, declaring the bridge unsafe. But fences could not stop whispers. People still came, still claimed to see her red figure on the water. By then, the curse had outgrown us. The red ghost woman was no longer just Kak Ros. She had become a legend, a warning, a symbol, a something larger than death itself. And we, the villagers, could only watch her story slip from our hands and become something else, an urban legend that Malaysia would never forget.
By the third year after the collapse, the bridge was no longer just ruins. It was a wound that would not close. Merchants had long abandoned it. Children were warned never to go near, and yet the whispers remained. Some nights, lanterns by the river flickered with no wind. Other nights, people awoke to the sound of footsteps on wet cement, though the span had long since crumbled. That was when Encik Rahman returned. Gone was the proud man who had once stood tall in a crisp white shirt. The Rahman who came back looked smaller, his shoulders bent, his hair streaked gray. He walked the village road quietly, avoiding eye contact, carrying the weight of something no one could name. When he gathered the elders, his voice trembled. "I thought I was giving you a gift. Instead, I gave you grief. If there is a way to make peace, I must find it." The Imam listened, but it was an elder from the Orang Asli community who finally spoke. He told Rahman that what had been taken by the river must be honored by the river. And so Rahman agreed to fund a cleansing ritual, not of bricks and mortar, but of spirits. On a humid evening, as the sky burned orange, the ritual began. A circle was drawn on the ground near the broken span. Offerings of fruit, rice, and red cloth were laid out. Incense rose in thick coils, carrying prayers into the dusk. The Orang Asli shaman chanted in a tongue older than the village itself, striking the ground with a staff carved with river symbols. Villagers gathered in silence. Some held their children close. Others crossed their arms, unwilling to believe. But when the wind shifted, carrying the scent of damp earth and iron, many shivered. It felt as if the river itself had paused to listen. Rahman stepped forward, his hands trembling as he placed a folded piece of red fabric at the altar. "For Ras," he whispered, "may she find peace." His voice cracked. Then came the moment none of us could explain.
The river grew still, unnaturally still, as though its currents had frozen. A light mist rose, drifting over the broken span. Some swore they saw a figure within it, a woman in red, her face softer than before, watching silently. No one dared speak her name, but all of us knew who it was. The mist lingered for a heartbeat, then dissolved into the night. The river flowed again. The chanting ceased, and for the first time in years, the silence felt clean. In the days that followed, Rahman built a small shrine at the river's edge. Simple, made of stone and wood, it held candles and offerings, and above it a plaque. In memory of Kak Ros, may the river carry her gently. Villagers lit incense there each morning. Travelers paused to bow their heads. The imam, though wary, allowed the shrine to stand, saying softly, "Sometimes peace requires many languages." The haunting did not vanish overnight. Shadows still lingered, whispers still drifted, but the terror lessened. The river seemed calmer, the nights quieter. Some said Ros had finally been given a place to belong. Rahman left soon after, returning to England with no fanfare, but his shrine remained, and with it a fragile sense of peace. For the first time, we dared to hope that the red ghost woman was no longer only a curse, but a guardian, a memory, a lesson carved into the heart of our village.
Years passed, and life in the village slowly found its rhythm again. A new bridge was eventually built farther down the river, strong and reliable, carrying farmers, schoolchildren, and traders across without fear. To outsiders, it was just another road, another piece of progress. But for us, the memory of the broken span never faded. The ruins of the old bridge were left to the river, swallowed piece by piece until only jagged stumps remained. The shrine for Kak Ros still stood nearby, its candles flickering each night. Travelers often paused, bowing their heads before crossing the new bridge, even if they didn't know why. Respect had become instinct. The stories continued, of course. Some swore that on misty nights a figure in red could still be seen standing at the water's edge, watching. Others said they heard whispers on the wind during the 7th lunar month, the so-called Bulan Hamtu. No one dared test the stories, and no one dared speak her name aloud after sunset. Yet something had changed. The fear that once hollowed us had softened into something else. Remembrance. Kak Ros was no longer just a ghost, no longer just a curse. She was a reminder of what happens when pain is ignored, when voices are silenced, when progress is built without blessing. As for Rahman, he never returned again, but his shrine remained, and with it, a fragile balance between the living and the dead. We honored her, and in return, she allowed us to go on. Now, whenever I walk by the river at dusk, I look at the water and think of her. I think of the bridge that was meant to save us, but instead took her life. And I think of the lesson etched into our bones. Some bridges connect land to land. Some connect people to progress. But some should never be crossed at all. The story of Kak Ros and the bridge in Kedah is more than a chilling ghost legend. It carries deeper lessons about humanity, society, and memory.
First, it reminds us of the forgotten and unprotected. Kak Ros was a woman trapped in domestic abuse, silenced, overlooked, and abandoned. Her violent death turned her into a curse, but symbolically, it was also her last cry for help. In every society, when vulnerable people are ignored, tragedies echo back to haunt us. Second, the bridge represents the limits of progress. It was built from kindness, but poorly guarded, unfinished, unsafe. A structure meant to connect became a symbol of division between life and death. Progress without compassion and responsibility can destroy what it was meant to save. Finally, the haunting shows the power of collective memory and belief. Even after new bridges were built, villagers still avoided the old one, lighting incense for Kak Ros. They knew the past could not be erased. It had to be remembered, honored, and respected. So, this ghost story is not just about fear. It's about how we deal with pain, injustice, and the shadows of history. Kak Ros reminds us that every spirit left unheard will find a way to speak, whether through whispers in the night or through the bridges we build and break. If this tale of the Lady in Red of Kedah sent chills down your spine, give Uncle Hollow and X a like so we know you want more stories from the world's darkest legends. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you'll never miss the next haunting drop. Tell me in the comments, do you believe Kak Ros's curse was real? Or was it just a story born from grief and fear, passed down through generations? Your thoughts and your own ghostly encounters make this channel come alive. And if you're brave enough, in the next video, we'll take you inside an ancient graveyard where they say if you hear a voice calling your name at midnight, you won't live to see the morning.